For decades, Israel and Iran waged a shadow war, a silent battle fought in the shadows, a chess game played with proxies and veiled threats. This conflict, though unseen by many, has shaped the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, influencing alliances, fueling regional tensions, and dictating the flow of power. Proxies, acting as extensions of their influence, cyber attacks, crippling infrastructure and stealing vital information, covert ops, a clandestine dance of espionage and sabotage, carefully avoiding direct confrontation. Both sides understood the devastating consequences of a full-scale war, and so, they maintained a delicate balance, a precarious peace built on mutual deterrence. The unwritten rule, never let the conflict spill into open warfare. This was the golden rule, the unspoken agreement that prevented the region from descending into chaos. This uneasy balance kept the region from catastrophe, even as tensions simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. The world watched, holding its breath, hoping that cooler heads would prevail. But on June 26, 2025, that era ended. The fragile peace shattered, the unspoken rules broken, and the region plunged into uncharted territory. The conflict erupted into direct military engagement, a sudden and violent escalation that caught the world off guard. Missiles and drones crossing borders, turning the skies into a battleground, sirens wailing in major cities, a chilling soundtrack to the unfolding crisis. The old rules are gone, replaced by a brutal calculus of power and survival. Now every action demands a forceful, immediate response, a tit-for-tat escalation that threatens to spiral out of control. No more intermediaries, no more plausible deniability. The masks have come off, and the true nature of the conflict is laid bare. Just two powerful militaries locked in open combat, a clash of titans with potentially catastrophic consequences. Iran, pressured by sanctions and unrest, its economy struggling and its people growing restless, gambled on direct action to reassert deterrence, hoping to regain its regional standing and project an image of strength. Israel, facing attacks on its soil, its citizens living under the constant threat of bombardment, responded with overwhelming force, determined to defend its territory and deter future aggression. The region teeters on the edge, the risk of miscalculation higher than ever, as each side weighs its options and prepares for the next inevitable strike. The world is no longer asking if a wider war will happen, but how. How far will the conflict spread, what weapons will be used, and what will be the ultimate cost, and who will be pulled in, as regional allies and global powers are forced to choose sides, further escalating the crisis and drawing the world closer to the brink. The Middle East has entered a new, far more dangerous chapter, a chapter filled with uncertainty, fear, and the ever-present threat of all-out war. The escalation began with Iran making a bold and unprecedented move. For years, the conflict between Iran and Israel had been fought in the shadows, through proxies and covert operations. But those days are over. Iran launched missiles and drones directly at Israeli targets, a clear and undeniable act of aggression. This wasn't a skirmish, it was a direct assault on Israeli territory. No proxies, no deniability. This was a calculated decision by the Iranian leadership. A signal that they were willing to abandon the old rules of engagement and engage in a direct military confrontation. Israel struck back within hours, demonstrating its resolve and military capabilities. The response was swift and decisive, signaling that Israel would not tolerate such blatant aggression. Sending stealth fighters deep into Iran, a move that showcased Israel's advanced air power and its ability to penetrate Iranian airspace with impunity. Targeting not just launch sites but also key strategic locations that were vital to Iran's military infrastructure, but critical infrastructure, crippling Iran's ability to wage war and sustain its economy. The attacks were precise and targeted, minimizing civilian casualties while maximizing the damage to Iran's war machine and nuclear facilities. This was a clear message that Israel would not allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons, and that it was willing to take drastic measures to prevent it. Both sides crossed a line, shattering the fragile status quo that had existed for decades. The rules of engagement had changed, and the conflict had entered a new and dangerous phase, transforming a shadow conflict into open war. The gloves are off, and the two nations are now locked in a direct and escalating military confrontation. Now, every strike is unmistakable, a clear act of war that cannot be ignored or denied. The consequences of each attack are far-reaching, with the potential to escalate the conflict even further. Every response immediate. There is no time for diplomacy or negotiation. The cycle of violence is accelerating, and the risk of a full-scale war is growing with each passing day. The psychological impact is profound, as both Israelis and Iranians grapple with the reality of living under the threat of constant attack. For Israelis and Iranians, the fear and uncertainty are palpable, as they try to navigate their daily lives in the midst of a war zone. War is no longer distant, a theoretical threat discussed in news reports. It's at their doorstep. The conflict has become a tangible and immediate reality, impacting every aspect of their lives. Air raid sirens, a constant reminder of the ever-present danger. Fear and uncertainty, etched on the faces of civilians seeking shelter from the storm, have become daily realities. The routines of life have been disrupted, replaced by a constant state of alert and anxiety. The margin for error has vanished. Any misstep could have catastrophic consequences. A single miscalculation could ignite a regional war, drawing in other countries and destabilizing the entire Middle East. The world watches with bated breath as the conflict unfolds and the stakes continue to rise, as two adversaries stand toe-to-toe, locked in a dangerous and escalating confrontation, each convinced their survival is at stake. This is not just a territorial dispute or a political disagreement, it is an existential struggle for both nations. The era of ambiguity is over. The conflict is out in the open, with no room for doubt or misinterpretation. The stakes have never been higher. The future of the region and perhaps the world hangs in the balance. The next move could change the region forever, ushering in a new era of peace, or plunging it into a devastating and protracted war. The US faced a dilemma: support Israel but avoid another Middle East war. Washington launched limited strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, signaling support for Israel and a warning to Tehran. President Biden quickly announced a fragile ceasefire. US military action would pause if Iran halted attacks on Israel. The world breathed a cautious sigh of relief, but the risks remain. The US is now directly involved. Any breach could trigger a much larger conflict. The State Department issued a rare do-not-travel advisory for Israel, underscoring the danger. This is more than a pause, it's a high-stakes gamble. The ceasefire is fragile, the threat of renewed violence ever-present. The crisis is far from over. The US travel warning set off a global chain reaction. Countries worldwide urged their citizens to leave Israel and avoid travel. The language was stark: high risk, unpredictable security, possible airspace closures. These advisories signaled deep international alarm and a lack of confidence in Israel's stability. For Israel, the warnings are isolating, turning the country into a no-go zone. The impact ripples through business, academia, and daily life, damaging Israel's image as a safe, innovative hub. Israelis feel abandoned, their sense of isolation deepening. The world's message is clear: for now, Israel stands alone. Airlines worldwide canceled flights to Israel, citing security risks and soaring insurance costs. Ben Gurion Airport, once bustling, is now eerily quiet. Military jets and a few Israeli planes are all that remain. The aviation blockade severs Israel's main link to the world, stranding travelers and crippling tourism. The economic blow is immediate: hotels empty, businesses shuttered, families separated. The sense of entrapment grows, reinforcing the feeling of siege. In the 21st century, isolation can come not from armies but from canceled flights and closed borders. Israel's vulnerability is exposed, not just militarily but logistically and economically. The conflict's shockwaves have gone global, fueling a surge in anti-Semitism and anti-Israel violence. The US issued a terrorism advisory, warning of threats to Jewish and Israeli communities. Attacks on synagogues, businesses, and individuals have spiked, forcing heightened security everywhere. Online hate and disinformation are rampant, making daily life more dangerous for Jews worldwide. Protests and violence have erupted in cities far from the conflict. The battle is no longer just in the Middle East. It's on the streets of New York, Paris, and beyond. The safety of Jewish communities is now tied to the fate of the region. Travel bans, flight cancellations, and global hostility are isolating Israel like never before. This isn't just diplomatic condemnation, it's a physical and economic quarantine. Even traditional allies are keeping their distance, calling for restraint but offering little support. Israel's economy, built on innovation and global ties, faces disruption and uncertainty. The sense of abandonment feeds a fortress mentality, making compromise harder and defiance more likely. The world's hesitation sends a powerful message: Israel may have to stand alone. Isolation threatens not just prosperity, but the nation's psyche. The crisis risks becoming a self-reinforcing cycle of defiance and further isolation. For Israelis, daily life is now defined by anxiety and disruption. Air raid sirens, school closures, and empty streets are the new normal. The psychological toll is immense. Fear, fatigue, and uncertainty pervade every aspect of life. Yet resilience endures, communities mobilize, support networks form, and people strive for normalcy. News of attacks abroad and global condemnation deepens the sense of isolation. National solidarity grows, but so does exhaustion. Israelis carry on, knowing their future hangs in the balance. The region stands, a crucible of ancient tensions and modern ambitions. Decades of conflict have left deep scars, and the fragile peace that exists is constantly threatened by underlying instability. The stakes are incredibly high, not just for the people who call this land home, but for the entire world. At a crossroads, a pivotal moment where the choices made will determine the fate of millions. The path ahead is uncertain, fraught with peril, and demands careful consideration. The US brokered ceasefire holding, barely. It's a delicate agreement, teetering on the edge of collapse, requiring constant vigilance and diplomatic effort to maintain. Any miscalculation could shatter this fragile peace and plunge the region back into chaos. One path leads back to shadow war, a world of clandestine operations and proxy conflicts where the lines between peace and war are blurred. This path offers a dangerous illusion of control, but it risks escalating tensions and drawing in more actors. With tensions simmering but open conflict avoided, a precarious balance where any spark could ignite a full-blown conflagration. The cost of maintaining this uneasy peace is high, but the alternative is far worse. Another risks a slow slide into wider war, a gradual but inexorable descent into a regional conflict that could engulf the entire Middle East. The consequences would be catastrophic, with untold suffering and long-lasting instability, with any misstep potentially drawing in the US and other powers. The involvement of global actors would further complicate the situation, turning a regional crisis into an international quagmire. The nightmare scenario: rapid escalation, full-scale war, a descent into total chaos, with devastating consequences for all involved, and devastation across the region. Cities reduced to rubble, economies shattered, and countless lives lost. The scars of such a conflict would last for generations. The consequences would be global. Energy shocks, disrupting global markets and impacting economies worldwide. Economic turmoil, sending shockwaves through financial systems and creating widespread uncertainty. And new waves of extremism, exploiting the chaos and instability to spread their hateful ideologies and recruit new followers. This is not just a regional crisis, it's a test of the global order, a challenge to the principles of international law and the institutions designed to maintain peace and security. In a connected world, no war is truly far away. The interconnectedness of our world means that conflicts in one region can have far-reaching consequences, impacting economies, societies, and security around the globe. The choices made now, in Jerusalem, the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Tehran, the center of Iranian power and influence, and Washington, the seat of American leadership and global responsibility, will echo worldwide, shaping the future of the Middle East and influencing the course of international relations for years to come. The world is not just watching, it's at stake. The stability of the global order, the security of nations, and the well-being of billions of people hang in the balance. The next chapter will define the century. It will determine whether we move towards a more peaceful and prosperous future, or descend into a new era of conflict and instability. The choices we make now will shape the world for generations to come.